Hey everybody, this is part 3 of this video series. If you haven't already, I'd recommend checking out the first 2 parts where I go over all the disclaimers, which I uploaded almost 3 years ago? Jeez, time flies. Okay, so if you're wondering why this video took so long, well, I had most of my research done and was ready to get started on scripting for this, but then... yeah. So I figured, I'm doing all the spin-offs in this video already, there's no harm in waiting a bit for this new Warriors game to come out and see if it has anything new. So I did. I waited, played through the game, good game by the way, and added those weapons in. So I was all ready to start working on the video. Fine, since this is a brand new main series title, I'll wait again. So I did. Again. And then life stuff happened, I made a couple other videos that nobody fucking watched, and here we are. This video is going to cover everything I haven't done yet. We'll talk about Engage first, then move on to all the spin-off games. Cool? Cool. While Engage itself may be a big love letter to Fire Emblem's past, that doesn't stop it from having a bunch of unique new weapons of its own. This time, a lot of them actually draw heavily from French, so apologies for any rough pronunciations. This is literally just the word liberation. Like, it has the little accent over the E so that you know it's French, but it means the exact same thing as the English word. From the German will, meaning will, and glans, meaning gleam. I could not for the life of me find anything that this name may have originated from, so it's possible the developers just picked some German words that they thought sounded cool and heroic. Georgios is a Greek name meaning farmer or earth worker, and is the origin of the English name George. This is likely in reference to Saint George, or George of Leda, a military saint who is most well known for the medieval legend of Saint George and the Dragon. This one is a portmanteau of the Greek words oligo, meaning little or few, and ludia, meaning nobility, making it roughly mean the noble few. This one is another portmanteau, likely coming from the words lilac and relation. In floriography, lilacs represent friendship and memories. They're also usually purple in color, which is a mix of red and blue. You get it? This one's got a bit of history. Brianac is supposedly the name of a spear wielded by the Irish god Lu. However, this is unsupported by any direct mythological source. The oldest reference to Brianac is found in the Japanese book Koku no Kamigami, or Truth in Fantasy, by Takerube Nobuaki, where he claims that Lu used the spear in the Second Battle of Mog Tuird. This whole thing is very similar to the situation with Ichaival from Genealogy of the Holy War, except this time it's not a mistranslation, it's just inaccurate history. Brianac is a name that's all over high fantasy Japanese properties. It's even the name of a pretty popular Yu-Gi-Oh card, which made this section kind of difficult to research. The name Venomous is possibly in reference to the spear Luin, which was said to be dipped in poison in order to control its bloodlust. Représailles just means reprisals in French. Fragarak was a sword wielded by Nuada, the first High King in Irish mythology. It was also sometimes known as the Whisperer, the Answerer, or the Retaliator. Supposedly, if someone had Fragarak pointed at their throat, they would be unable to move or tell lies, hence the name the Answerer. Revanche means revenge in French, specifically in reference to the act of regaining something that was taken. Lendebert was the wife of Conall Cernach, a hero of the Ulaid in the Ulster cycle from Irish mythology. Obscurité means darkness in French. A miséricorde was a type of long, narrow knife used in the Middle Ages. It was often used to mercy kill heavily wounded soldiers, hence the name Misericorde, which means act of mercy in Latin. The cinquedea was a type of Italian short sword or long dagger that was made popular during the Italian Renaissance. The name translates to 5 fingers, referencing how the width of the blade was typically the width of 5 fingers next to each other. Carnwanhan comes from Carnwanan, a dagger used by King Arthur. The Welsh triads listed as one of Arthur's sacred weapons given to him by God, alongside Excalibur and his spear Rongaminiad. Nodus means knot in Latin. It eventually came to mean a knot, as in a swelling, such as in a muscle, in late Middle English, then eventually came to just mean a problem or complication. And that's finally the end of the main series games. For now. Who knows, by the time this video comes out, Nintendo might have finally announced that Genealogy remake. But for the time being, this is it, which means we can finally move on to the spin-off games, starting with... Yeah, I've got nothing. So, Fire Emblem Warriors doesn't actually have any new weapons with interesting name history. Any regalia weapons that it includes are all taken from previous Fire Emblems. It does have 3 new weapons, the swords Enloron, Facina, and Rysel, but from what I can tell, these names are purely made up, with no historical origins of any sort. Good job, Koei Tecmo. But hey, maybe they can redeem themselves with this next game. So, as one would expect from a spin-off of Three Houses specifically, Three Hopes contains many of the same weapons that the former does. However, much to my surprise, Three Hopes does include quite a few new pieces of weaponry for us to talk about. These first few are actually weapons that were in Three Houses that I just kind of forgot to talk about in that video. But hey, they're in this game too, so I might as well cover them here. Case in point, the Cursed Ashia Sword. A more accurate translation of the Japanese name would be Bewitching Sword Ashura. Ashura, or Asura, refers to a class of supernatural beings found in several Indian religions, such as Hinduism and Buddhism. Their exact characteristics vary from mythos to mythos, but Asuras are typically depicted as beings of superhuman power, or wrathful, power-hungry demons. This pair of swords references Moraltok and Begaltok, 2 swords wielded by Dermend Oa Dubne, a hero from Irish mythology. Their names mean the Great Fury and the Little Fury, respectively. Riddle was a sword used by the dwarf Regin in Norse mythology, and was used to cut out the heart of the dragon Fafnir after he was slain. This sword is actually present in the data for Three Houses, but it goes unused in that game. Azi Dahaka, aka Zahak, was an evil character from Persian mythology. The original meaning of Dahaka is unknown, with some suggestions including stinging, manlike, and foreign. The word would eventually migrate to Eastern Europe, where it came to mean dragon or water serpent in Balkanic and Slavic languages. Labranda is named for an ancient archaeological site in western Turkey, which used to be a sacred site for both the Carian and Mysian peoples. The popular image of worship there was called a Zeus Labrandius, a statue depicting Zeus holding a lotus-tipped spear in his left hand, and a double-headed axe, or a labrys, in his right. Jarngriper were a set of iron gloves worn by Thor in Norse mythology, said to be necessary for him to carry his hammer Mjolnir. Talos was a giant bronze automaton from Greek mythology, made by the god Hephaestus in order to protect the Phoenician princess Europa from pirates and invaders. This weapon is named after the sacred goat who became Zeus's foster mother in an attempt by his birth mother, the Titan Rhea, to protect him from his father, the mad Titan Kronos. The name Amalthea means tender goddess in Greek. Hrati was a sword owned by the dragon Fafnir, which was taken by the hero Sigurd after he slew the dragon. Ichor was a substance from Greek mythology, said to be the blood that flows from gods and other immortal beings. Sutungur was a Jotun, or giant, from Norse mythology. He came across the dwarves Galar and Fjalar, not to be confused with the Rooster Fjalar, who is a different character, while searching for his parents, only to discover that the dwarves had killed them. He threatened the two brothers, and they convinced Suttungr to spare their lives by giving him the Mead of Poetry. And that's all for 3 hopes. Not so bad, right? Well, now we move on to the real meat and potatoes of things, with... Ah yes, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, the long-anticipated crossover between Fire Emblem and Shin Megami Tensei. Did it deliver? Well, sort of. If you're a fan of Fire Emblem's tactical gameplay, then you're probably a bit disappointed, as the combat and world make this just kind of feel like a Shin Megami Tensei game with a Fire Emblem coat of paint. That is to say, this game is a lot more SMT than FE, and that extends to the weapons as well. A lot of callbacks to past Fire Emblem weapons are here, but there's also a lot of Shin Megami Tensei mainstays that are included, many of which take from Eastern mythology, an area that Fire Emblem tends not to delve too deeply in. Needless to say, there's plenty to go over here. Cleave Solas, God, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, means Sword of Light in Irish. It appears as a trope object, or reoccurring story element, in Irish myth, being a part of many Irish and Gaelic folktales. Along with Ganjong, Moye was a sword from Chinese legend. The 2 blades are named after the people who forged them, being a legendary swordsmithing couple. Dainsleif was the sword of King Hogni, a hero from German myth. It is said that once Dainsleif is drawn, it cannot be sheathed again without first spilling blood. Masamune was a medieval Japanese blacksmith widely recognized as the greatest swordsmith in Japan. The name Masamune is actually attributed to several swords that the man made, and not just a single blade. Murasame means village rain or autumn rain in Japanese. The name likely originated from the sword of the same name from the epic novel Nanso Satomi Hakenden, a massive story about 8 fictional warriors originally published in the 19th century. This weapon is named after Taira no Masakado, a Japanese samurai notable for leading the first ever recorded uprising in the Heian period against the Japanese government in Kyoto. Hino Kagutsuchi was the Japanese god of fire, and the final child of the gods Izanagi and Izanami. In Japanese mythology, his birth was said to signify the end of the creation period and the beginning of death. Both Kusanagi no Tsurugi and Ame no Murakamo are names for the same sword, a blade supposedly wielded by the Japanese god Susanoo, and one of the 3 great treasures of Japan. Futsu no Mitama is the name of a sword supposedly given to the Japanese Emperor Jinmu by the thunder god Takemikazuchi to help him in his subjugation of eastern Japan. Hayakaze just means fast wind in Japanese. Alicorn was the Latin word for a unicorn's horn, although the word is often used to describe winged unicorns in modern fantasy. The name Hayanie likely refers to Mozu no Hayanie, a technique used by the bull-headed shrike, a species of bird native to East Asia. The birds will often spear their prey onto sharp sticks or thorns to make them easier to tear into bite-sized pieces. Kartikeya is the Hindu god of war and victory, and is often depicted riding an Indian peacock and wielding a spear. Tonbo Kiri and Otegine are 2 of the 3 great spears of Japan, a set of 3 spears made by the swordsmith Fujiwara Masazane. The Karura is a creature from Japanese mythology that has a human-like torso and a bird-like head. It's actually an adaptation of the Garuda, a race of giant birds from Hindu mythology. Ame no Nuboko means heavenly jewel spear in Japanese. It was said to be the weapon used by Izanagi and Izanami to raise the primordial landmass out from the ocean. Yomotsu Hirasaka is a pathway leading to the entrance of the underworld in Japanese myth. Ningen Mukotsu means humans have no bones in Japanese. It was the name of a lance supposedly wielded by Mori Nagayoshi, one of Oda Nobunaga's generals. Also known as Eligos, Eligor was a great Duke of Hell mentioned in the Ars Goetia, the first book of the Lesser Key of Solomon. This one is possibly in reference to the Islamic concept of Nazr, which means a sacred vow or commitment to carry out an act. Think of it as literally swearing to God to do something. Sleipnir was an 8-legged horse from Norse mythology, ridden by the god Odin. Longinus refers to the Lance of Longinus, a spear that was poked into the side of Jesus Christ after his crucifixion. Iwatoshi was a halberd wielded by the legendary Japanese warrior monk Saito Musashibo Benkei. Trishula is a lance wielded by Shiva, the Hindu god of destruction, time, and medicine, among other things. Ho Jianchong, literally meaning fire-tipped spear, was a spear wielded by the deity Naza in Chinese popular religion. Ame no Ohabari was the sword used by the Japanese god Izanagi to slice up his son Kakutsuchi after he burned Izanami to death during childbirth. Galatine was a sword given to King Arthur's nephew Gawain by the Lady of the Lake. Parashurama is one of several avatars of the Hindu god Vishnu, and is notable for using an axe. In fact, his name literally means Rama with an axe in Sanskrit. Girimakala is a large elephant from Buddhist folklore, known for being the mount of the malevolent king Mara. An Azusa Yumi is a type of sacred bow used in some Shinto rituals, named so due to it being made from the wood of an azusa, or Japanese cherry birch tree. Also known as Kama, Kamadeva is the Hindu god of love, desire, pleasure, and beauty, who is often depicted as wielding a bow. Gandiva was the divine bow of Arjuna, a demigod from the Hindu epic Mahabharata. Kunikazushi is the Japanese name for an early type of cannon called a breech-loaded swivel gun. The name Kunikazushi literally means destroyer of provinces, so named for their use against the Japanese by the Portuguese in the Siege of Moji in 1561. Ame no Kagayumi was a bow wielded by Ame no Wakahiko, a Japanese god of grain. Pinaka is a bow wielded by the Hindu god Shiva. It is the counterpart of Sharanga, a bow wielded by Shiva's fellow god, Vishnu. Lilith was a female demon from Judaic mythology. Her origins actually date all the way back to ancient Mesopotamia and the spirit Ki Sikil Lil La Ke, before eventually being adapted into Jewish folklore as Lilith, the first wife of Adam. Vajra translates into diamond or thunderbolt in Sanskrit. It is a club-type weapon with a ribbed, spherical head used in several East Asian cultures, although its use these days is more as a piece of symbolism rather than a tool of combat. The Yggdrasil was the sacred world tree in Norse mythology, said to be the center of the cosmos that connects the 9 realms. Lorelei is a Germanic river spirit said to reside in the Rhine River. She uses her beautiful voice to lure sailors into crashing into rocks, similar to the Greek siren. Heidrun was a sacred goat from Norse mythology, said to produce mead from her udders for the Einherjar, warriors who have died and gone to Valhalla. The weapon is likely named for the second book of the Christian Bible, which itself is named for the Exodus, the event where Moses led the Hebrew slaves out of Egypt. Yagrush was one of 2 magical clubs wielded by the pagan god Baal, with the other one being Amer, which you might remember from the 3 houses section in Part 2. Sha Na Ra is the name of a crystal skull found in an archaeological dig in Mexico in 1995. Like many crystal skulls, Sha Na Ra is said to have amazing supernatural powers, such as healing and divination, although none of these claims have been scientifically proven. This weapon is named for Astaroth, a demon commonly mentioned in Christian demonology. He is said to be a great Duke of Hell, on the same level as Lucifer and Beelzebub. Indra is the Hindu god of lightning and storms, among other things, and is often depicted wielding a thunderbolt. Sharer was an enchanted mace wielded by the Mesopotamian god Ninurta. Its name means Smasher of Thousands in Sumerian. And that's it for Tokyo Mirage Sessions. This game proved to be quite a nice change of pace for Fire Emblem, even down to the weapon naming. Sure, it may have taken a little while to go through all of them, but that's nothing compared to the behemoth that comes next.
Fire Emblem Heroes!
And what better way to end things off than with the most content-rich Fire Emblem game ever. Fire Emblem Heroes is Fire Emblem's foray into the mobile gacha market, and has been a pretty successful venture for Intelligent Systems. Of course, since the game has been receiving new content on a regular basis for 7 years? Good lord, I feel old. Since it's been receiving new content on a regular basis for 7 years, there's a lot, and I mean a lot, to go over. Who knows, it might get a bunch of new weapons while I'm editing this video, thus making it instantly outdated. Heroes also uses a lot of names from Norse mythology, as in they use the actual names, not modernized versions, with letters nobody uses anymore, like F and Thorn. I'm going to try my best to pronounce all of these correctly, but do forgive me if I get a few wrong. Regardless, strap in, because we're going to be here a while. Before anything, I want to talk about the generic tomes in Heroes. The different tomes are given different prefixes based on their color. Ralther for red, Blar for blue, Gron for green, and Hvitur for white. The reason isn't all that complicated. These are just the words for those respective colors in Old Norse. Breidablik is an anglicization of Breidablik, the home of the Norse god Balder. Its name roughly means broad gleam in Old Norse. Folkvanger, meaning army field, is the name of a meadow from Norse mythology ruled over by the goddess Freya, where half of all warriors who die in battle are taken. As opposed to Valhalla, where dead warriors continue to train and prepare for Ragnarok, Folkvanger is a much more peaceful resting place, where the dead warriors can be freed from battle. Fensalir is the place where the Norse goddess Frigg dwells. Noatun is the home of the Norse god Njordur. It's also the name of an Icelandic supermarket chain, and given that this is Anna's weapon, it makes for a pretty funny double meaning.
No refunds!
Meaning one who shines, Glitnir is the Hall of Forseti, the Norse god of war and justice. It was considered the place to resolve conflicts through discussion, rather than violence. Elivagar are icy rivers from Norse mythology that are said to have existed since the beginning of the universe, and span across every realm. Leipter, Silgur, and Gjol are each one of the 11 Elivagar. Gjol in particular lies in Hell, and separates the world of the living from the world of the dead. Gjallarbru is a bridge that spans the river Gjol, and needs to be crossed in order to enter Hell. Valaskjalf is one of Odin's halls in Norse mythology. Its name literally translates to Shelf of the Slain. Hlivskjalf is the throne of Odin, and allows him to see into all realms. Kurmt is one of 2 rivers that Thor wades through every day on his way to judgment by Yggdrasil, the World Tree. Thok was a giantess from Norse mythology who is believed to be the god Loki in disguise. Levatin is a weapon mentioned in the Old Norse epic poem Fjolsvensmal. What kind of weapon it was isn't exactly clear, but it is said to lie in Legiarn's chest, with Legiarn being another epithet for Loki. Sinmara was a giantess who is typically depicted as a consort of the giant Surtur, and was the keeper of Levatin. Niu is the Old Norse word for the number 9. This is in reference to the 9 locks on Legiarn's chest that keep Levatin sealed inside of it. Bylister is one of Loki's 2 brothers, along with Helblindi. Leifjaberg is a mountain with healing properties from Norse mythology, where Air and the other handmaidens of the goddess Menglod sit. Menglod is theorized to be another name for Freya. Literally meaning sunken bank, Sokvabekkr was said to be the residence of the goddess Saga. It's theorized that Sokvabekker is another name for Fensalier, and Saga is just another name for Frigg. Ifingr is a river that separates Asgard, the realm of the gods, from Jotunheim, the realm of giants. Hel, with one L, is the name of the Norse world of the dead, as well as the being that rules over it. Rather than being a place of fiery torment a la Christian Hell, Norse Hell is a more peaceful place, where those who are not warriors are sent after they pass on. Eljothnir is the name of Hel's Hall in Valheim. The name roughly translates to damp with sleet or rain. Hreidmar was a shape-shifting sorcerer from Norse mythology. He became obsessed with the cursed ring Andvaradnot, only to be killed over it by his children Fafnir and Regin. Lyngheiðr and Lofnheiðr were both daughters of Hreidmar, and were the sisters of Regin, Otr, and Fafnir. Thialfi is a servant of Thor, who is mentioned in several different mythological stories. Skinfaxi and Hrimfaxi were the horses of Dagr and Not, the divine personifications of day and night. Broker was a blacksmithing dwarf and the brother of Eitri. The two of them forged many divine weapons, including Thor's hammer, Mjolnir. Also, fun fact, this weapon's Japanese name is literally Magic Gun Broker. Seidr is an old form of magic or shamanism that was practiced in Old Norse society. While the specifics of what Seidr encompassed aren't entirely known, it is generally thought to be a form of divination or astral travel. It was believed to grant temporal powers, even allowing powerful users to change the future. While it was primarily practiced by women, the god Odin is said to have also mastered Seidr in order to harness its power. Gullveig is a female figure in Norse mythology, who is associated with the Aesir-Vanir War told about in the Voluspa. After being burned and reborn 3 times, she mastered the art of Seidr, becoming a powerful seeress and taking on the name Heather. Atlas was a titan from Greek mythology who famously held up the heavens on his shoulder. Chong is the Chinese term for spear. Nestrond is the place in Norse Hell where Nidhogr resides, and is where criminals such as murderers are sent after they die. Quietus is a term meaning a stillness or a pause. In literary terms, it is often used to refer to death. Incipit refers to the opening words of a piece of text, mostly used in reference to older texts or manuscripts. Kvasir was a being from Norse mythology, born from the combined saliva of the Aesir and Vanir. He traveled the lands, spreading his great wisdom until he was killed by the dwarves Fjalar and Galar, who drained Kvasir of his blood and turned it into the mythical mead of poetry. Geirskogul is a Valkyrie mentioned in the Old Norse saga Heimskringla. Thogn is a Valkyrie whose name means silence in Old Norse. Sangrithr is a Valkyrie whose name means very violent or very cruel in Old Norse. Rangrithr is a Valkyrie whose name means shield truce or shield destroyer in Old Norse. Hrist is a Valkyrie whose name roughly means the quaking one. Girdriful is a Valkyrie whose name means spear flinger. Gondol is a Valkyrie whose name means wand wielder or magic wielder. Thrima is a Valkyrie whose name means fight. Ono and Masakari are both Japanese terms for axe. A Yari is a Japanese straight-headed spear. In a similar vein to the Wo-Dao, Wogun means Japanese club or Japanese cudgel in Chinese. Hama-Ya is just the name of the spellbound Yumi, a weapon introduced in Fire Emblem Fates. The Kabura-Ya is a type of Japanese arrow that was designed to whistle when fired, and it is thought in Shinto practices that the sound the arrows made warded off evil spirits. A Kadomatsu is a traditional Japanese New Year's decoration, often placed in front of homes and buildings as a sign of welcoming. Literally translating to welcoming spring, Geishun is used in Japan as a greeting to usher in the new year. Hikami translates to divine ice in Japanese. A wagasa is a type of umbrella popular in East Asia that is made of oil paper and bamboo. Kagami mochi is a traditional Japanese New Year's decoration, consisting of a small mochi being stacked on top of a larger one, with a mikan orange placed on top. Hagoita are wooden paddles used to play hanetsuki, a Japanese game similar to badminton that is often played around the new year. And uchiwa is a traditional Japanese rigid paper fan. Myogi is Japanese for dancer's fan, specifically in reference to a folding fan. A tamari is a type of Japanese craft, traditionally given to children by their parents on New Year's. Its name literally means handball. Kumade are traditional small bamboo rakes, often used as ornaments in Japan during holidays, as they are believed to literally rake in good luck. Casablanca means White House in Spanish. Given that this is a Valentine's Day weapon, this is possibly a reference to the famous romantic drama Casablanca, which is named after the Moroccan city of the same name. Gratia is the Latin word for grace. Gerbera is a genus of flower, more commonly known as the African daisy. Achaemenes is a genus of tropical flowering plant, commonly referred to by names such as widow's tears or Cupid's bower. Sihrimnir is a creature from Norse myth that was killed, cooked, eaten, and then resurrected every day by the Aesir and Einherjar in an endless cycle. And Eldhrimnir is the cauldron where Sihrimnir is prepared by Andhrimnir, the cook of the gods. Gullinkambi was a golden rooster that lived in Valhalla, and one of the 3 roosters whose crowing was said to signify the beginning of Ragnarok. Munin and Hugin were a pair of ravens who would travel throughout Midgard to bring information to Odin. Their names mean memory and thought, respectively. Veðurfolnir's egg and eagle's egg refer to Veðurfolnir, a hawk that sits atop the head of a large eagle that is perched atop Yggdrasil. In reference to Idun, a Norse goddess associated with apples and youth. Idun would carry a basket of apples with her, known as the Apples of Youth, as it was said one bite could instantly turn a person young again. The design of this weapon resembles an uli uli, a traditional Hawaiian instrument that consists of an empty gourd with tiny seeds or pebbles inside, which rattles when shaken, similar to a maraca. A gunbai is a wooden fan, formerly used by samurai officers to signal orders to their troops. In modern times, it is used by gyoji, or sumo referees, to signify their rulings. Taiko are a type of Japanese drum, often used in festivals and celebrations, dating back to as early as the 6th century. Urdur, Skuld, and Verdandi were Norse goddesses who were known as the Norns, essentially the equivalent of the Greek fates. Urdur means fate, Skuld means debt or future, and Verdandi means happening or present. Vafthrûdnir was a wise Jotun that lost a contest of wits against Odin in the epic poem Vafthrûdnismal. Magdhrasir is another Jotun mentioned in Vafthrûdnismal, who is theorized to be the father of the Norns. Tungrisnir is one of the goats who pulled Thor's chariot. The Japanese name of this weapon is Akato Ao no Kinaru Onibi, which roughly translates to strange red and blue demon fire. The demon fire is in reference to Onibi, which are ghostly lights that appear in Japanese folklore. Onibi are said to be spirits born from the corpses of people and animals, and are often conflated with will-o'-the-wisps from European folklore. And that's it. That's every single important Fire Emblem weapon. So far, at least. There's going to be more games, and I'm sure Heroes will get an update or two in the future that will add some weapons worth talking about. But for now, I'm done. I hope you enjoyed this lengthy journey through history. It took a lot of time to make, so if you did like it, feel free to subscribe to the channel for more content in the future. Until next time, take care of yourselves.